talk to you today about a topic that we don't see very often in tech conferences or growth conferences, and that has recently become more and more popular, which is branding. And the first question that I want to ask is, how many people in the room are brand managers? Just raise your hand. One hand. Anyone else? Okay, so my goal today is that by the end of the session, you all raise your hands. And let me tell you why. Everyone, no matter what your role is within an organization or whether you have your own venture, your own startup, everyone in this room is representing at least one brand, and that is yourself. So watch out, because any of these tactics that we're going to talk about could potentially change the way in which you share your story with the world, with the market. So the first thing that I want to share is a little bit about myself. I'm originally a business major. Then I realized that I needed design in my life, so I went on and did a master's in design management. And then I realized none of that made sense without psychology, so I'm currently a doctoral student in psychology. And as if that wasn't enough, I'm kind of combining everything in the way that I approach branding. So the tactics that you're about to hear combine, in a way, the basic notions of human behavior that are embedded in psychology, and then the principles of user experience that are found in design, and then just the business logic that's embedded in management. And that's how I approach things. The Lean Branding book is just sort of a culmination of all of those findings, and it was published last year by O'Reilly Media. And ever since the book came out, I've become a consultant for companies of all sizes that are just trying to develop stronger brands or rebrand, or even startups that don't have one that are trying to get started on this. Before I start sharing those tactics, though, I did want to share this contest. I know that some of you are taking notes, and I just wanted to tell you that if you share your notes for this talk using #Reactor Breakpoint and @Laura, Busche, which is my Twitter handle, you could win a complete branding package where my team and I help you develop your brand all together with a logo concept, color palette concept, typography scheme, everything. So share your notes and use this hashtag and this handle to do so. Let's get started. Okay, this went fast. Let's just start by saying that branding is not this mysterious black magic process that most people want us to believe. We shouldn't be scared of it. We shouldn't think that we're not capable of engaging in branding, because it quite simply is everywhere you look. Last time you ordered a meal and it arrived super cold, and you thought the flavor was off, the time was off, and you were so mad at the place that brought this meal to you. That was branding failing. So it's not invisible, it's not intangible. You can definitely taste it, you can touch it. And to be more concrete, this is the definition that I'd like us to go out of this room with, to take with us. And it's the idea that a brand is the story that your audience remembers when they think about you. So if that audience is a buyer, if that audience is a user, if that audience is you right now, whatever you take with you when you think about this talk, about this conference, that is the brand. So what you've thought so far about Reactor Breakpoint has actually shaped the way in which you think about that brand. And those are the stories that I'm interested in helping you create. Now, an easy way to understand this, you think story, okay, so what's with this story? How does that kind of work? All of us are in a state A, which is our current state. It's a state of problem. We have a need, we have a pain, something that needs to be solved. Brands that build strong brand stories are shortcuts that take you from an A state, your actual state, to an ideal state. They save the time, resources, the energy that you would have to spend going through the middle of this process. So it'll just give you a shortcut to achieve that. And think about your favorite brands. Think about your favorite book. Didn't that product do that for you? When you open the pages of that book and you realize that you could be a better self, that you could be a better manager, or that you could be a better designer, all of a sudden this brand is helping you achieve your dreams and your goals and aspirations, most importantly, and it's serving as a shortcut. So this is the basic idea behind everything that I'm going to be talking about. Now, when I started working with startup founders, I realized that they were very sort of discouraged. Why? Because startups don't have a budget, because many startups don't have relationships, because they have a hard time opening partnerships. So between 2012 and 2014, I had to face 97 of these early stage tech startups as they first learned about branding. And it was nothing short of challenging. It was really, it was a moment of stress, and we all had to figure out how it is that branding applied to early stage ventures, and even if you're inside a company, to intrapreneurs, which cause change within the company. And one of the most inspiring insights that we found is that companies like this started out with a visual identity that was designed by the founder, who had no design skills at all, using free software that I think still exists, called GIMP, G-I-M-P. That was 1998, and that's exactly how it looked. But if you see how the Google logo has progressed and its entire visual identity, you'll realize that the original vision remains. The set of colors, sort of the graphic style, the way they approach search has remained faithful to the founder's original vision. And this is all something that makes up the Google brand nowadays. So important to realize that even the largest companies at some point did not have the resources to go forward with a branding campaign as we usually know them. And what it all comes down to is branding can be hacked, and I'll share some of those hacks with you today. So this is the order in which I'm going to share them. You're going to start feeling that the talk is going to go a little bit faster, because we do want to hear all of these 10 hacks, and they're divided in 3 categories. So the first set of hacks have to do with the brand story, which is the value creation story that this brand brings to the marketplace. How this brand solves someone's problem. The second set of hacks has to do with brand symbols, which is what people usually associate with a brand. So if you ask someone in the street what a brand is, they'll usually point to the logo, they'll usually point to a color palette, and this is only part of what a brand is. A brand is its story, is its symbols, and it's also its communication strategy. So the third set of hacks will have to do with that, with the communication strategy and growth strategy of the brand. Now, let's start with the brand story. And the first hack that I want to share with you is something called Brand Storyboard. This is a tool that I've shared in the last year, and it's been in blogs like the Envision blog. If any of you use the tool for prototyping, we had the opportunity to share it there. And the essence of this storyboard is, this is going fast. It's these 8 blocks that you can start thinking about right now, even right now as you think about your own brand. And this is sort of how it goes. Once upon a time, and in that first block, you'll describe the current state of your target user. So once upon a time, there was a group of entrepreneurs that wanted to grow their companies much faster, for example. He or she always, and that's the second block, and that's where you describe this person's daily duties and tasks. So if you were to grab their planner, this is what would be on their planner. He or she always. But had a problem, that's the third block, and that's where the pain comes in. That's where you'll describe what it is that's hurting, that they're trying to solve. Then he tried to solve it. That's where you'll share the alternatives, the different ways in which he or she was trying to solve this problem before you came to the marketplace, but he wished. So yeah, there were some alternative solutions, but those were lacking something. And this is where you take note of that. Until one day, and that's, the until one day in every story is when they get to meet you, the solution, your product, your service. Unlike his solution, the solution that this person was already using, this is what you bring to the table. And his or her wish finally came true, which was to so-and-so. As simple as this might seem, it's the structure to tell a story. And storytelling, while it comes naturally to human beings, is not that easy to shape. And staring at a blank sheet of paper doesn't help either. So this tool has really helped a lot of startups that are confused figure out what their brand story is. I just wanted to show you a couple of examples. If we were to do this with the Reactor Breakpoint brand, it would go something like, once upon a time, there was an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur that had an idea for change. He or she always had to come up with creative ways to bring this change to his or her organization, but had a problem growing or scaling those tactics to be able to impact revenue and sales. He or she tried to solve it by sitting in front of a computer and talking to people on the internet, but he wished that he would be able to share it with actual people in a physical environment. Until one day, he or she is here sitting, listening to me at Reactor Breakpoint, and unlike his solution, he was able to share with peers what they had learned and exchange insights. And his wish came true. He was able to grow his company given the insights that he'd learned from his peers. We've done this dozens of times, and startups have done it. People that don't think they can draw for their life have done this, and it's really, really useful. I'd highly suggest experimenting with this. Now, for the second hack, if you've been in the world of psychology, name association might ring a bell. It's a technique that psychologists have been using to find out what it is that we associate with a given word. And it's simple. All you have to do is, if you have a brand name, a proposed brand name, we all know how hard that can be to validate. I have this idea, and this is my name, but I have no clue how to test if it's going to work. So this is one way to try to figure that puzzle out. And what you do is you write the proposed brand name on the center of the page, and then you ask people who don't know about this idea yet to jot down all of their associations, their first thought when they see the word. And what you'll end up with is something like this, where you have a brand in the center. There's a brand, hypothetical situation with a brand called TeachStars, and you get all sorts of concepts aligned with what people perceive in that word. If you do this enough, that you get a large amount of concepts, what you'll end up doing is you'll have to find the affinities between all of those words that people have suggested, and you'll find, I promise, very valuable insights as to whether this brand connotes what you're trying to say or doesn't. So that's for the second hack. Now for the third, consultants in the management world, you might have seen this tool. It's called a positioning map. Why it's important? Because sometimes we start building a brand story without knowing what our competitors are doing. We don't take into account what's already out there, and the market is saturated. So it's very important that we know where we stand. And this is how it works. It's a matrix. People say marketers can make anything fit in a matrix, and this is sort of evidence of that. The way it works is it's really simple. You just find two variables, two characteristics in which you want to be compared. You want to compare your brand with other existing brands. So in this example, you're looking at the x-axis, the horizontal axis, goes from left to right, where the left is a small amount of post types, and the right is a large amount of post types. And this is a comparison of social networks. And then you have a vertical axis where The bottom is a low amount of users, and the top is a high amount of users. And there you can see sort of how Instagram, Facebook, and Vine rank in terms of, will this social network allow you to create something different from a video? For Vine, the answer is no. But for Facebook, the answer these days is they'll let you post almost anything. Animated GIFs, they'll do videos, they'll do status updates, links. So there's a high variety of post types. Just another example of this, low-cost airlines. So you have, in this case, we're comparing two different characteristics. We're doing prices on the horizontal axis, and we're doing years in the market as our vertical axis. So what you can read from this is that out of the low-cost airlines, you have the two most expensive ones in this comparison, according to the data that was used to create this chart, are Germanwings and Norwegian Air Shuttle. While the cheapest ones are EasyJet and Ryanair. Now, out of all of them, Ryanair happens to have the most experience in the marketplace, and that's why you see them up in the top. So it's really interesting just to navigate the brand landscape and understand where your company fits, where your product fits. Okay, so that's for the positioning map. Now the positioning template. This is a simple phrase. When I started working with startups and they had to pitch their ideas, like be in a space like this and share their idea in 5 minutes, you have no idea how hard that is. It's hard for me, it's hard for anyone, no matter how many times you've done it, it's always nerve-wracking. So what I suggested was that they used a simple sentence that's in blue right here. I didn't come up with this, it's been used for years, and it's George Moore Consulting that first proposed it. Wherever you see a blank space, of course you have to fill it in with something that makes sense. And the idea is that it reads something like this. For, and that's where you state your target customer, that, and then you state what that person needs or what that company needs if you're working on the B2B space. And then you'll say the product or service name, my umbrella, my reactor breakpoint, we'll see an example in a minute with the conference, is A, and that's where you'll state the product category that offers, and you'll end up saying the benefit. I know there's a lot of blank spaces here. Here's an example. For, the words that you'll see in teal are the words that are the part of the template, and the words that are in black are just what we filled in. For developers, designers, marketing visionaries, and innovators, that, what is it that they want to do? What's their pain? What's their goal? That want to learn about tech design and growth, and then you state the product name, which in this case is Reactor Breakpoint, and then you go ahead and say, is A, that's where the product category comes in. So what is Reactor? Is it a hotel? Is it a location? Is it a city? No, it's a 2-day conference. That's what it is. That offers insightful talks, inspiring workshops, and awesome people. And if you go to the Reactor website, that's exactly what you'll find. But if I were to introduce this event to someone else, or your company to someone else, or your brand to someone else, this is the template that I would use to share that story. So that's the positioning template. Now for the fifth hack, again, if you've been in the design world for enough time, you've seen this word in action. Ethnography is one, while many people make it sound like the most sophisticated of projects, it's actually part of human nature. It's something that we've been doing ever since we appeared on this earth, regardless of how you think that happened. We've always been observing other people's behaviors. The idea with ethnography is that instead of doing those marketing surveys that we all know can take years, and whenever the actual results come out, they might not even be useful because they're that old. Instead of doing those huge marketing surveys, what's becoming increasingly popular is for startups and companies that are in fast-paced environments of innovation to go ahead and conduct ethnography. So what they'll do is this qualitative study where you go into the space where your users are, your customers are, your buyers are, and you start taking careful note and you start observing their activities, their behaviors, their actions, their interactions, the objects that they use. So it's a research method. It's much more agile, depending on how you conduct it, of course, but it's a way to speed up the brand story development process. You'll learn a lot from your users this way. Now for the second part, I told you we were dividing this into 3, so we're doing brand symbols now. This is what most people actually think branding is, so you'll feel at home if that was your idea before this talk started. Visual audit. I'll ask you a question. Is fun left or right? And you can say it if you want. Left? We all seem to agree that it's left. Does anyone think it's right? Okay, that makes sense because we all attach meaning to symbols, to visual symbols. And we don't even realize this, that we're so trained, that our brains are so trained to associate certain things with certain symbols. And that's why I would never recommend anyone to take an idea and start thinking about visual identity or a logo, which is what most people think they need. What they really need is a brand. So I would never recommend anyone to start with that unless they've done a visual audit. And this is a tool that I think is really, really useful to speed that up. A couple of tools, actually. There's a site that many of you might know. It's called the Noun Project. And the idea is to define every noun in the world. It's really ambitious. Every noun in the world in terms of the visual, in this case, icons that can represent those words, that most often represent those words. So if I were to search, say I'm building a children's brand or children's product or service, this is what I would search for at thenounproject.com. This is my search result. I searched for children, and this is what came up. So say I was building a visual identity for a children's brand. This would help me speed up the process in a much more efficient way. I don't have to pull these symbols somewhere from my head. I can actually go to the internet, use these tools, and see what people are already associating with my concept. Say I was going to build a fast food brand. There's also a competitive side of this visual audit. Why not search for all of the brands in your space and see what conventions they're using? You'll find, in this example, and it's pretty clear, you'll find saturated colors. And you'll find a lot of yellow and red, and there's a psychology behind that. There's an issue of speed and speed of consumption that has to do with this. But if you were to really research all of the brands in your space and find the commonalities, you're going to have a much easier time coming up with a visual brand identity. Now, here's something that a lot of people don't know exists. So when they're trying to figure out whether they should go with, let's say, logo A and logo B, they struggle because they don't know how to objectively figure out what each of these logos entails, their connotations, and their users' preferences at the end of the day. So nowadays, we have tools like these two that I'm mentioning there, Verify app, by Zerb, actually, and PicFu. Both of these tools have features that let you test literally one version of a visual symbol against the next. So those two images that you're looking at to the right, I'm actually making them bigger. Hold on, here, bigger. It's a test that you can do anytime. The first one is being done with PicFu, and it's just, which logo feels more trustworthy to you? And your user will be able to answer, and they'll be able to say why they answered in that way. And the second example it has to do with emotion. If you're showing them a piece, a communications piece, a brand piece, they can tell you if that made them feel happy, annoyed, excited, any emotion you can virtually think of. If you're debating between two symbols, then this would be a good test to run. Which of these two designs means voice activation. So is it the one in the left? Is it the one in the right? And you get the answers from these people, and then you also get their explanations for why they thought one design meant voice activation versus the other. You can also run tests like these, where you change a single variable. You just changed color, or you changed the copy, or you changed the text. And the tool will help you survey your users and find out which of the two versions resonates better and why. Okay, we're getting there. So for hack number 8, and we're still talking about visual symbols. We're still talking about what people normally associate with branding. And I'm going to talk about design templates, which is a very controversial topic, I understand. Some designers absolutely hate these templates. Others find them to be very useful shortcuts. In reality, just think about it. Developers are using open source code all the time. But we in the design world refuse to do something different from starting with a blank canvas. We need to start rethinking our methods, because there are literally millions of designers around the world creating these assets, high-quality assets, that we can take advantage of to just not start with a blank canvas, which is terrifying to some people. So why not, I'm just using an example here, Creative Market, which is a site that offers these kinds of templates, and you can use them for virtually anything, any brand communication piece you can think of. So, stationery, think about brochures, which, to be honest, we all hate to work on. Business cards, and even color palettes for inspiration. If you visit any of these marketplaces, what you'll find is that someone has already done the most difficult part of the work for you, and all you have to do is to customize and adapt these templates to fit the look and feel that you're trying to convey in your piece. This is not something you always have to do. This is something that might come in handy. And if you are an entrepreneur and feel like you don't have a budget to hire an agency, this is a good way to start approaching your communication pieces that's not using PowerPoint, not using Publisher, not using regular desktop software to create these pieces that are so valuable for your business and your brand. Okay, now for the third part, which is brand strategy, as I told you, the brand is not just the symbols, it's the story, it's the visual symbols, and it's the growth strategy or the communication strategy. The first hack that we're going to talk about, many of you might know this, some others might not, is social media automation. What do you mean with social media automation? Well, simply put, not all of us have the amount of hours that it takes to sit down in a computer every single day and share our brand story in every single social channel. It's reality, and it's something that I faced with startup founders and entrepreneurs, and I face it every day. So happily, there are many tools today that can make social media, which is nothing else than brand conversations, happen much faster, much easier, and more efficiently. One of these tools is Hootsuite, and many large companies are actually using this tool regardless of the fact that they have a huge social media department. This is the tool that's helping them unify all of those voices in a single brand voice. What it actually does thousands of things, but the main features that I'd like to bring today are scheduling, so you can actually plan your posts for the future. What your brand is going to say doesn't have to be planned on the same day. It could be planned a month in advance. This is not to say that conversations happen a month in advance. You can still do real-time conversations, but you can do all of the editorial planning beforehand. And then you also have other features like tracking where your links are, how many times your links are clicked. What happens when you share something on social media? We used to be blind to this, just sharing links like crazy, but we did not have a way to track where those brand conversations were going. And that's something that Hootsuite and other social media tools like Buffer and Sprout that are growing really fast can help you achieve. Now, for our last hack, this is a true, I don't want to say secret, because many people know about this, but it's one of those things that can set your brand apart from your competitor, and it's your ability to test new ideas quickly. Landing pages, what they allow you to do is just to publish a single product service idea in one page usually, and capture all of the interest that is existing in the marketplace for that idea, so you are able to test it. Why is this important for brands? Because brands, lean brands, need to be able to react to market changes quickly. So it's very important that we have tools that let us test an idea in 2, 3, 4 hours. And these tools are landing page builders, which some of you might have heard about them. Some of you might not have. Some of the most popular ones are LaunchRock. Kickoff Labs has a good tool. You can also use templates. And here's a personal favorite that I'll show you, Unbounce. Some of you might be familiar. I just want to point out, I'm not affiliated to any of these brands. I'm just sharing with you what I'm using and what startups have been using to speed up their testing for these kinds of landing pages. So what you do is you build a landing page, and you can actually launch 2 versions. Growth hackers are totally familiar with this, so it's A/B testing, but for your landing pages. You don't need to go through IT. You don't need anyone else's support. If you're in the marketing department, and you can use what you see is what you get builder, you're all set. You can test your idea, and you can take your brand in a new direction just with landing page builders. Okay, seeing as we have 5 minutes, right? 3 minutes, I'll just do a bonus, and it's an additional hack. It's brand partnerships. You know, you're sitting in a room right now with something like, I think we're like 80, maybe 70, maybe 100. In the entire conference, there's probably a lot more people, and they're all in charge of an important section of their company or someone else's company. So why not take the opportunity to figure out how those brands can work together to create larger impact than if they were working separately? So go ahead and talk to the person next to you, or when you were in a coffee break or lunch, talk to someone new and figure out how those 2 brands that, one could go only so far alone, explore how far they can go together. So this is an example of 2 brands that apparently had nothing to collaborate around because they're competitors. You have digital notebooks with Evernote, and you have physical notebooks with Moleskine. How can those 2 brands collaborate? Well, they are collaborating. It's a smart notebook. You take notes on a Moleskine, and you scan it with your Evernote app, and you have everything digitalized. So think about contests, webinars, product integrations. Virtually any kind of partnership is a lean way to maximize your reach, your brand's reach, and your brand's growth without having to invest so many resources. So I've shared with you 10 hacks that I've found along the way that have helped startups at all levels with any amount of resources share their story in the marketplace. And I guess my only question is, what are you waiting for? And I'd like to end.